Hey, welcome to another Tyrian tale. A small introduction. As a foundation for the version of Cantha that I'm gonna show you, I used once more this image, a texture that can be found in-game. However, in this particular rendition of the world, the region of Cantha once explorable in Guild Wars 1 are drastically altered. As an example, Xingji Island is depicted as a peninsula here, and the mainland of Kaineng City appears to have been invaded by the sea, so to speak. While there could be some lore explanations behind this, specifically provided to us through the Eye of the North manuscript in the form of reports of earthquakes and giant cracks opening in the middle of urban Cantha, I decided to ignore the apparent redesigns, and instead went with a more predictable approach. Still, while having the original look as reference, let me say that the Guild Wars 2 rendition of Cantha must see some changes, even if slight, given that the time jump from our last visit is significant. Before I dive into the map, let me do a quick recap of the few yet fundamental things we know about the potential Cantha of today. Roughly 200 years ago, the Canthan Empire became extremely isolationist and xenophobic against non-humans. It was unified behind a strong national identity, an enterprise aided by the Kurziks and Laxons' loss of independence. Roughly 250 years ago, we know that the afflicted were ultimately vanquished, with the intervention of the Ministry of Purity. The criminal organizations known as the Jade Brotherhood and Ampha were also dispatched. The Tengu had been exposed and routed. Plus, there's reports that the Jade Sea and the Echovald Forest started a slow process of transition to their former appearance. So, with this preamble done, let's approach the map from a familiar place. Xingji Island would remain true to its history, an oasis of pristine valleys and beautiful vistas, and a fulcrum for scholarly pursuits. The safe confines of the Xingji Monastery would still hold festivals for the general Canthan populace to attend. However, as we witnessed with the Sunqua Peak Fractal, which took place roughly 200 years ago, things might have taken a different turn on parts of the island. The urban parts of Cantha, Kaineng City and beyond, could have seen an expansion both to the east and to the southwest. The current emperor, or empress, would still reside on the northern coast of Cantha. To contrast the lack of fertile land, Canthans could have engineered hanging gardens, with harvesting and breeding taking place on terraces and rooftops. With most major criminal activities out of the way, only the Crimson Skull would remain to haunt Canthans, a fanatical, piratical cult worshipping death. The involvement of the Etherblades is not to be forgotten though, as we know from official sources of their imminent reintroduction. Only their affiliation remains to be seen. Next are the Echovald Forest and the Jade Sea, or the Kurziks and the Laxons. Even if both were reabsorbed under the Empire's flag, their respective territories would not be tainted by urban expansion. Once enemy factions, the Kurzik and Laxon peoples would now be able to freely exist throughout the entirety of the Empire's territorial grasp. Their primordial need for independence would only be sated by the knowledge that the deep wounds inflicted by the Chained Wind a long time ago are now healing faster than ever, both by natural and artificial means. The Harvest Temple could also now be back to its former beauty, once again floating up in the air like it once used to. But horrors still lurk beneath the Jade Sea and deep inside the Echovald Forest. Then there's the Salt Spray Dragon Kunavang, shown to us in the official teaser for Ender Dragons, in the midst of an argument with an unknown being about helping mortal races. Honestly, Kunavang sounds like a wild card to me, as she appears reluctant to help mortals. I didn't want to speculate too much, but as you can see, the temptation with all this new land was too strong. So I made up some rough concepts for these unknown regions. With the Tengu decimated and forced to leave the Canthan mainland, I figured that their main presence could now be further south. Perhaps introduce a new kind of tengu, native to this glacial part of the world and resembling penguins. Maybe even add a new creature penguin race, personality-wise akin to a mix of Choya and Quaggan. Another peculiar Kanthan race, the Yetis, would also be pushed to the southern regions. The territorial expansion of the Kanthan Empire would inevitably see the creation of new cities, one to the southwest, on the slopes of white mountains inhabited by white tigers, and one to the east, not too distant from the southern wilderness. Let me end on the note that many untouched real-life Asian influences, like the many cultures surrounding the Bay of Bengal, like the Indian one for example, could be included. So maybe have the southwestern part of the Kanthan continent dedicated to that. If you don't want to tie humans yet again to it, you could create a new race. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.